how did you get into all of this kind of in the first place? Because everyone we've spoken to quite often has quite an obscure way of getting into kind of the environmental world, and it's not always the way people might think. So how did you get involved?
Well, I was brought up on a farm, so that was amazing. Lambs jumping. Yeah. So lambs jumping on hay bales and everything like that. And so that was obviously lovely and very sweet. But what happened specifically, actually, I think, is that as I was kind of growing up and, 16, 17, I was having conversations with my granddad, who had farmed the farm his entire life. And he was essentially saying that he could see the demise of small and medium-sized farms. Essentially the way things were rigged up, the commodity market, the food supply chain, the bigger powers within the land sector, it was essentially, he could see the demise of essentially that world. And, from my perspective, I didn't really want the farm to be sold, so I was thinking, God, shit, this does not look like the direction that I want to go in. And I guess that kind of struck a question in my mind, like, how could we reverse this? And what happened specifically? Then I was lucky enough to travel around the world, and I realized, oh my gosh, that the problem that we're facing on our farm is not unique to us. It's not looking great in a lot of different places. And that was doing, 4-day wilderness trail. It was working in farms in Australia, in France, and I realized, oh my God, we really need to do something here, because this is not a nice to have problem to solve. This is if we don't solve this, this is not good. So that was kind of like, I guess, the catalyzer for me to choose that this was the path to go down. And then I came back from travels and I studied permaculture, which is basically land system designed, which is very much about how do you use design principles and design thinking to align to natural systems. So you're not always fighting nature, you're aligning to it, and actually the output is, better as a result, and long-term resilience. And then luckily, within 2 weeks, there was a regenerative agriculture course. So I went and did that, and this was 12 years ago. And that was kind of using those system design principles, but within a broader landscape, within the farmed environment. And I was like, fantastic, this looks brilliant. This is exactly what I've been looking for. Let's try and apply this thinking to the farm. And it was then that it was kind of like paper maps, Google Earth, whatever. And so that was kind of where the whole idea of the Land app came from. But really, I think it was the recognition of, if we don't do something, this is not good. Something needs to be done. Okay, what could be done? And that just kind of sparks a bunch of ideas. And for whatever reason, I was then pig-headed enough to keep pursuing it. But the transition, I also slightly recognized, whenever this was, 12 years ago, whatever, that there's a massive thing that needs to be done for things to work. And I feared that if I was to try and do a sort of farm consultancy, farm by farm, I recognized within my lifetime, I probably wasn't going to really move the needle. And so that was why I was like, okay, well, technology is a thing, that seems smart. So then it was then I kind of thought, okay, well, fine, I'll think about technology. And that's when I started weaving these ideas together, speaking to loads of people. And I was fortunate enough actually then to end up being in Ordnance Survey's innovation program. So weirdly, I went down to Ordnance Survey. I said, I've got this idea for a piece of mapping software. You've got to help me. And in the first meeting, they said, I don't know how we're going to do that. Sorry, Tim. I went back 6 weeks later and I said, no, guys, you really do need to help me. And it just so happened, it was just then that they had launched the Ordnance Survey Innovation Hub, Geovation, in London. So they said, look, just call this guy. Don't really know what he's doing, but it's some innovation thing. Go and chat. So I called him up, went straight up to London and walked into this massive empty room with 2 guys sat on chairs and a coffee machine. And that was the Ordnance Survey's sort of Geovation. And so I was like, guys, here's my idea. It's the innovation lead, the head techie. And great, we started building this plan. And that was why I was, oh my God, this thing is possible. And then they said, hey, well, Tim, actually, we're starting an innovation program, a 6-month innovation program in 2 months' time. Apply, and if you get in, then great. So I did that. I was accepted. It started on my birthday, one of those weird things. And 6 months, met loads of people within DEFRA, within Land Registry, within Ordnance Survey, and had a proof of concept. And that was enough to go out to farmers and estate owners and land agents and say, guys, would this make sense? And that was enough validation to raise the first round of investment. So it's kind of been this very organic journey from like an original recognition of, what the problem was and maybe how I could contribute, doing all this thinking, ending up with a few things like falling into place. And, a few years later, we've got 40% of farmland in England, and we're working with corporates and governments to make sure the investments into landscapes are really effective. So we're, in my head, although this is probably going to be the same to the day I die, we're still very much day one of the plan. This is phase one. And because I just think there's so much to do. But anyway, so that's been...
Is so much to do.
There's so much to do. So that's been the journey to date. So from the farm to the conversation with my granddad, the recognition of the problem, the idea of, technology, the fortuitous set of events that came together until, we're sat here having this conversation.
That's it. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, similar, there's so many, as you say, there's so much to do, and my view was not enough people are hearing about the fantastic stuff. It was actually our original conversation that sparked the whole kind of podcast idea.
Yeah.
So, one of our pub conversations.
Yes, it was.
So, and here we are. So it's really interesting how these things sort of get going and take off and move forward, isn't it?